Yeah, that went quick.
It did go quick. That was good. That was really good. They
Or,
become my favorite episodes, the ones where we truly have. This is what we started this for, right? To just have a conversation with someone interesting in the space and not just like talk about a career or like throw questions at them.
yeah.
And hope we can do more of those this year. So we have just said goodbye to Jake Madoff, who is, according to his LinkedIn, can't verify this, certainly sounded like it was, top 1% growth marketer on Earth, maybe in the whole solar system. We have to ask him that next time. But we had a really great chat with Jake about loads of different things. We didn't like throw questions at him and go into his career. It was just a real flowing chat on everything from the future of marketing. Is a search results page going to exist in a few years? Is it possible to run a true brand awareness campaign in the Instagram feed? What is shopping going to look like, online, offline?
Yeah.
A whole gamut of different things to talk about. And I even threw the question out there, which was, is it possible to truly build brand awareness in 2024? I think that was the question I said. But anyway, if you listen all the way to the end, you will find the answer. Actually, if you listen all the way to the end, you might find out the secrets of direct response TV.
No, you won't. Oh my god. You're selling it hard. Selling it hard. No. That's it. It was good. It was a good chat. It was a good chat. Jake is a good guy.
Anything to add?
No.
How are you all
Jake,
doing?
good to meet you.
You too.
Yeah, very good. I feel like it's you've been the unluckiest guest in that every time we've come so close, it's like, oh shit, one of us is ill, or we can't make it, or there's some childcare problem. We've had to push you, but we made it. We
Yeah.
finally made it.
It's suspense.
This
If
is it.
only that suspense can be carried over to the audience, but it was good suspense.
Good, good. And you must be so practiced now. You know, you've been ready
Yeah,
like 4 times now. You're just like gonna kill it.
that's right. Yeah, I've been practicing in the mirror.
Excellent.
Love
Whereabouts are you calling from?
I'm in New York, in Manhattan, on a rainy
Mm.
day.
Oh,
Yeah,
very nice. Whereabouts?
Nice.
in the Upper West Side, Manhattan, if you know that area.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Very nice.
Pretty cool.
I miss New York, man. I was there for quite a while, and I'd like to go back, but
Were you
it's
in
not really a
Manhattan
city.
with
Yeah, I
work
was
one?
down on Bowery in Rivington, around that
Okay,
way.
got it.
And
Nice.
yeah, it was another lifetime ago, man. Once you have kids, you can't go to New York anymore.
Yeah,
Too noisy and too far. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Like I said,
for sure.
it's been a little while in the making. For everyone listening, and actually for us, because we haven't met previously, only for a few messages. If you want to give like a quick intro, then we can jump into good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jake Madoff. Is this all go? Are we recording now for the pod?
Sorry, I meant to say we are recording it.
Okay, we're recording now for the pod. Yeah. So Jake Madoff, I'm a full stack growth marketer. Um, for this audience, I usually have to define that whenever I'm on a kickoff call or anything, but I assume the audience knows full stack. Basically, I cover all of paid social, paid search, and a bit of SEO and CRO. And yeah, I've been doing growth marketing for about 9 years now. Led growth at Bespoke Post, Sealed, Everytable, and I've been doing freelance for that whole time, and working with a ton of different brands, different industries, from like Home Chef, Hims and Hers, Trademark Engine, Hum Nutrition, across like B2C, B2B. I kind of try and do it all just to collect as much experience as possible. Yeah.
I love that.
That's nice. Do you describe yourself as full stack? Yeah, I haven't heard that necessarily yet from a marketing perspective, but it makes complete sense. I'm going to start using that.
I do. Yeah.
It's a good expression. It's a good term. I think
I
I'm
do.
semi stack.
Off stack.
Front end. Yeah.
I'm a front end marketer. It's good. Like full stack. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think. Do you think you have to be like a complete expert in everything to be a full stack growth marketer, or What's your definition of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wrote an article on it like in 2022 or something, when like it was kind of starting to bubble up. Like I remember when the term growth hacker was a thing, and then I tried that for a while, but that felt kind of weird. So then I just moved to full stack growth marketer because that feels more technically accurate. But I don't think you have to be an expert. I think like you can call yourself, if you do, maybe your background is mostly in paid social and you've started to do paid search, I think it's okay to start to message yourself as a full stack growth marketer. In my case, I have literally just been doing full stack marketing since I started in marketing. Like even when my first bit of marketing I did was my own company, which was a trade and barter application, an iOS app. And that was just a few years after university. And I was like running Facebook ads, Google ads, some SEO. It was, those platforms were in their nascent stages. This was like in 2015. Facebook ads wasn't as big a thing. It was there. I think at that time it was actually called the Power Editor, if you remember that tool.
Yeah.
To Ads Manager. Yeah. But yeah, and then from there I worked at Bespoke Post for 5 years, and that was like the pure definition of full stack. I mean, it was me and another person co-leading growth, and it was Facebook, Quora, Instagram, Reddit, Snapchat, podcasts, sponsored media, where we were like doing. I like to say, like, if you can run ads on it, we've probably tried testing it, and that foundation just like really kind of accelerated that full stack ideology for me.
Yeah, that's nice.
That
And
makes sense,
it's interesting that you said if you come into it through paid social, because I feel like the majority of people that we talk to on here and probably meet, and people that I know that work in this space, but like came in through paid social. I feel like I don't want to be unfair, and I'm sure I'll get some people hate me for this, but I wonder if there is something to do with like coming in through paid social and wanting to then branch out, whereas a lot of PPC specialists kind of stay in PPC and they're happy to like stay in there, whereas I feel like most kind of paid social people I've met are like, I kind of done paid social and I feel like I want to move on. It's almost like paid social can sometimes feel like it's the least technical one. It's like I want to get search under my belt as well, because I feel like it's a bit more kudos to say that I can run search campaigns. Do you think that's fair?
I totally understand that thought, because I mean, I guess I truly started in paid search and SEO. I guess even more specifically, SEO is like the very first thing I ever tried. And it is definitely more technical. I mean, back then, yeah, it was, I mean, even still search is a bit more technical than paid social, where, it's a lot more, there's a lot more room for error, I think, in paid search in your setup and the configuration and the technicality of it. If you mess up a match type, or if you set your bid cap wrong, where with paid social, usually you're just running maximize conversion. And as long as you understand and have like a history of, okay, I know these audience slices work. I know how to, of course, the biggest thing now is, do you know how to evaluate ad creative? And then do you know how to communicate the results of A/B testing with ad creative? So I would definitely agree that SEO, paid search, a bit more technical, and then paid social is more of a experience, being able to really understand patterns in creative. A little bit is configuration. I've definitely come on where a campaign, like I see a campaign and they're running traffic and reach campaigns and they're trying to drive purchases, and I'm like, turn it off immediately. So like there is that element of it, but yeah, relatively speaking, I would agree.
Yeah,
it's a lot less technical now than back in those Power Editor days when you could fiddle around with like so many different settings and things, and I can't even remember half of them now. But now it's just like idiot mode, really, isn't it? It's like all of the platforms are moving into that. It's like set and forget mode. But yeah, like you say, it's like it's the creative leading channel, really, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah.
What are you going to say?
I was thinking.
Go for it, Jake.
I'd be curious to have this conversation with you two, because I've discussed this on a few other podcasts, and that trend of with PMax, with advantage shopping, what is your all take on seeing how the platforms are basically trying to take away as much of that control and just give it over to the pixel, basically. What are your like short-term, medium, long-term thoughts on where that's going?
I think it's like one of these evolve or die things, right? It's almost like there's no point fighting it to some degree. I tend to, whenever I go into any ad platform now, I'll be looking for like quit the wizard and like go into like advanced mode or something. But then most of the time, I'm probably not really changing any specific settings that wouldn't be in there anyway. But I don't know. It seems like a shame. It seems like some of the art, I guess, of what we used to do, like back in the dark ages, I guess, of like actually optimizing things and fiddling with things and testing audiences and building like audience matrices and testing this creative with that audience. And now it's just broad or some lookalikes. So I think it's a shame. It makes sense though. I mean, the platform is going to know people significantly better than we are, and it just means you have to just change. I don't think the platforms are going to move to a position where they can generate creative. I'm sure there probably will be. I'm sure Facebook or Meta are probably thinking about that. Would be amazing to be able to say we're going to automatically generate some AI creative for you, and for small advertisers that would probably be great. But you know, like we said just now, it definitely is a channel where you have to think creative first, and I think from that standpoint, a human is always going to be better than a machine for that concept. Do you agree, or do you disagree?
Yeah, I think right now there's a good balance between social and search, where social and some of the search is very creative driven, which is great because, like you said, the AI and like algorithms on this platform are a lot more advanced than they used to be. So if you feed it the right creative, you should have great results. And up until very recently, I've had the same, if not better, results that I was getting 10 years ago. So like, I also fight that debate that, you know, it's getting more expensive and more expensive. I think there's still ways to make paid social and paid search like very, very cheap. And the setup of becoming a commodity and you're fighting on a creative. So I kind of like that. Because it makes you think creatively, and I think that's a lot more defendable, because when you're a startup and you're fighting like big corporations that have to take 6 months to make a video, you can be very, very competitive in terms of what you can test creatively and how fast you can win, and you can win with a much, much lower budget as a result. But I do still like that on search you can still do very micro like keywords, like on like search results, for example, go for like the very long tail and have like still have like some tactical approach that you can control both on YouTube and search. So that might be taken away soon. I don't know. I'm not that close to the news, but as long as it's still available, I still like that, because I think there's some interesting things you can do still on being like very tactical on like a set of keywords in your niche. But yeah, I think where is it going in the future? I don't know. Like you said, Jake, like go with the flow, and you know, as long as you always testing, I think that's the main thing. Like always test what's available to you, because something that maybe wasn't working 6 months ago might be working now, and everyone might not be doing it because, you know, people are lazy. And like, you know, the same as the size of the business, like a marketing team that's been in place for a couple of years is probably a lot lazier than when they started. So there's like a lot of things to be done there.
I've been trying to popularize the phrase "always be testing," ABT, always be testing, because it is just so important now to be doing that. But yeah, I mean, on Meta does seem to be. It's interesting how like the curve, how I'm perceiving it is, the platforms are moving more towards, let's say, what an ad unit that looks like paid social. And what I mean by that is, Google is releasing betas like Performance Max, like Demand Gen. Those are running across, their their creative channels, their creative placements. It's on search, but it's also on shopping, on discovery, on display, on YouTube. Of course, Meta is already there. You can run a lot of creative placements there across feed, reels, etc. TikTok, of course, big player. That's creative based. So between those two platforms, yeah, I mean, like the campaign build that Meta is using, that Advantage Plus, where they're trying to basically say, just upload a few signals, we'll take it from there, and then we'll try and serve your audiences. I almost always will build my own and launch like either a stacked lookalike audience or maybe like some sort of layered interest audience. Over time, I have more success with that than I do just letting Facebook determine, here, serve to whoever you want. Because, and same with Google, actually, like with Google, with Performance Max, I actually find if you give it, I usually launch what I call like a broad and a narrow within the asset groups within PMax. So like if I build a PMax campaign, I'll launch that broad and narrow asset group. I'll launch 2 asset groups within that campaign. And I often find the narrow one, i.e. me giving it more signals, will perform better than just letting it kind of find people within the ecosystem. So it's interesting because I still feel like they're trying to, it's a slow progression, obviously, but it's still not there, I feel, where it's consistently outperforming. Sometimes it will outperform, but on average, the kind of automatic style where it just let the campaign build do most of it is underperforming the more manual one. But yeah, I'd say in the medium to long term, if I define that by 5 to 10 years, holy crap, is this going to look very different? Like, I think the SERP, the search engine results page, will look very different. I don't even know what search ads will look like at that point. I think it's going to be a lot of, I think most platforms are going to look like a feed. Like it's going to look like that creative thing that I was mentioning where like if even on Core or Reddit, anything that looks behind right now, it's all going to start looking the same where you can like port over pretty similar creatives like across different ecosystems. So that's probably, I think the biggest change will be the search engine results page in like 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
I think what we need is for Meta or Google to buy each other. And then you can do search intent campaigns in paid social placements. That'll be magic.
On that, I made this prediction. I was just talking with Mark DeGrosse on Digital Marketer podcast, and I made this. He asked me, "What do you think will happen? Like, what's your in a way like dark opinion or popular opinion with advertising?" And I said, and I've been thinking this for a few years now. I think once Apple gets into the space of advertising, not just through Apple TV or OTT, but once Apple starts like using a push notification. Imagine being able to build a campaign that sends a push notification, like you get an Amber Alert on your phone. But instead of an Amber Alert, it's like a little bar notification that says, shop at Chewy, 20% off now. And you click it and it drives there. That is a high touch placement. You click right into that. It brings you to the site where you can purchase. I think once Apple gets into advertising and you can do like broad push notification targeting across iOS devices, that to me is like the advertising end game.
that would be very cool, and also potentially very annoying as an end user. But I mean, maybe that's coming soon, and we think Spotify has just successfully sued Apple for the whole side loading, or making purchases outside the App Store, saving their 30% fee. If it turns out that they can no longer do that, they have to reduce their fee down or something, then maybe they need to start thinking about we know we're kind of privacy first and we hate ads, but our hands are tied here, guys. We need to start sending ads to your iPhones.
Yeah,
or Vision Pro, just direct into your eyeballs.
That would be crazy. That's a good shout. Yeah, push notifications straight into the... Yeah, man. We talked about privacy in the previous episode, didn't we, Jake? I was just saying, like people on the streets, like they don't care about their privacy. They've given up a long time ago, and it's just like governments and companies that talk about it. But really, if people care about their privacy, they wouldn't use TikTok
Mhm.
to begin with. But yeah, that'd be an interesting one.
People confess more things to Google than they do their whoever you would confess to in a church, your priest.
What-
or something.
Yeah.
Now,
Google is the new god, basically. That's what something that's been like said for a few years. Yeah, it's like the new. Yeah.
What's crazy about that too is we already do a lot of that in search. So like, Google can probably tell before anyone if you have one symptom of a cold, Google's like, are you okay? Are you dying? Like you've searched that you have a cough like 6 times. Is everything okay? So Google definitely knows, will know before anyone that, about certain things. I was thinking, as a next evolution with the latest ChatGPT app where now you can do the talk and it has the AI voice with it.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, because with search, a lot of it is, positive inputs you're inputting in, and then you can extrapolate from there. With chat and voice, like the Her movie with Walking Phoenix, imagine that and like all of that data. It's not just like a profile based on searches or internet activity. It's like a profile based on your life. It'll read, because imagine everything it's going to pick up. It's picking up intonations in your voice. It's picking up they developed AI now to tell if someone's vernacular or parlance or nonverbals suggest depression. So now imagine like it's like on top of just content, like with Google, it's picking up on all the nonverbals that you're communicating, like intonations. If you're focusing on certain things, if you're stressed about something, I mean, it's going to be picking up on so much.
And you start getting ads. You start getting like, I don't know, ads for like cancer medication. You're something. Holy shit! Is there something I don't know?
Yeah.
But actually, back to the Apple point, right? If we're talking about like this amazing, potentially unrealistic advertising ecosystem, if it's Apple, they've even got all of your health record. If you've got an Apple Watch or whatever, it's like target everybody in the US an elevated heart rate. Without any of their family's phones within radius. And it's like, what's that person doing alone in their bedroom at like midnight, and show them an ad for Cheetos or something.
Yeah, and they bought Fitbit too to get even more of that.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the kind of stuff that maybe everyone is obsessed with, your browsing history and what you're doing on your phone, but there's this undercurrent of all this other privacy data that's just kind of nobody's really thinking about.
But once things go AI and voice kind of activated and dialogue activated, what do you think is going to happen to like advertising? Because when they can't be like a list of results, when they can only be one suggestion, or I assume one, because it'll be very annoying to have something listing like 5 options in your ear, like this is the first one you could choose. This is like, it'll be like the best one will pop up basically. So it's only the best one that will win in a way. But I don't know. What do you think of that?
I mean, if I try to kind of reverse engineer and look at a similar pattern, when the voice assistants came out, like Siri and Alexa, I remember people being like, I'm going to write my articles for voice assistants, or I'm going to try and like, if I ask Siri, can you look at like the nearest place that sells toothpaste and find me that, you want like your business to show up for that. I think with AI, it'll be probably even more integrated, where I think like the final output can't be what it is now, which is like the citations. It like gives you the links with like little citations, or I can't imagine that's like not native enough of an experience for a user. I think there could be things in the background where potentially we're paying, like as an advertiser, we're paying ChatGPT for like putting us in more suggestions. So like if I'm like a water filter company and I'm searching on ChatGPT, give me the best water filters, it may do something like search does, and as it tells you, it may be like, these are the featured ones that we recommend, and it'll have like a little sponsor tag next to it. It could look like something like that. And then, we have a similar interface there. In the voice world, it will probably be even more seamless. I mean, it could really even be. I guess part of it too is the ad disclosure. There's of course disclosure that you have to have with an advertisement. So I do wonder if in your ear it's going to be reading like, we recommend the Brita filter paid for by Brita. I don't know if it's going to be something like that, but
yeah, it'll be a different voice to your usual assistant's voice, so
yeah,
it's an
exactly.
ad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is if we get to go on.
Just as like it'll be like a very sweet AI voice that you're listening to. It's like, this is the filters we would recommend, and it'll interject by Brita. It's going to be like a stark like.
Yeah, in the voice of the CEO, Brita.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get to a point, people have said that you'll just say like, "Hey Siri, get me the best energy rated light bulb for my lamp or whatever," and it'll just arrive. But the problem with that is that kind of completely removes organic from the picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of people will be ignoring search. I very rarely, as I think probably all three of us, I haven't actually ever met anybody that clicks on the ads on Google, but people do it because there's fucking millions of people doing it. But
yeah,
it depends if the companies even give a shit about organic. Maybe organic is suddenly going to be not a thing that people care about because it's not that we don't want it or the companies don't want it. It's just that the SERP as it is now just doesn't exist, and we might look back in 10 years and be like, oh my god, I can't believe we were looking at a list of results that were 90% of the time gamed by SEO these days, or the top ones are paid for, all the rest of them are gamed. It's very rare that you actually have a legit non-SEO optimized result on the first page anywhere. So you could argue that maybe organic is even dead. Is there such a thing as organic, right? Because everything is being optimized. So maybe true organic would be something that we can't even picture because it doesn't exist at the moment.
That's a very interesting point, Jake. I didn't think of that, but nothing. I was trying to think what is really organic. Like even when you talk within a startup and stuff, it's like, oh, we've got this like all this UGC or this like organic content coming from this. Like, no, you fucking ask for it. Like the customers, like you did something for the customer to do it. So is it really organic? There's no. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. There still is, but yeah.
I think like in the name of organic content and especially SEO, I think that the first to go probably, because it is interesting to me to some degree of like you mentioned where I usually don't click on sponsored listings either. Like I'm much more of a if you hit me enough times with an ad, then and I'm in market for the product. Like if I'm actually in market for a water filter and you keep hitting me with ads, I will eventually search one of these brands organically, but very rarely am I clicking directly in that, which is pretty wild to think about considering most of our attribution models are last click based or click based.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is wild because that would suggest there's probably going to be a pretty big disruption at some point when people are just so overexposed and saturated to reverting back to very complicated view through attribution and being like, giving one conversion 0.2 to Facebook and 0.6 to YouTube and like really distributing that attribution. But I think search e-commerce is, I think, like the first to go. I think like that's already on the way out. Like I don't know many people now that are like using, if you're searching for a product in Google, I don't think you're definitely not engaging with, maybe organic posts, probably not the search engine, the sponsored listing results, but you are probably with the paid shopping results, shopping tiles. So like, I think search ads for products are probably on the way out. Like that's not a very resilient category if I think about the ecosystem.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that placement was probably a pretty revolutionary one, right? Because before that, I'm trying to think if I can even remember before that, but you would search for a product and then you would probably go to image search and you're almost performing the shopping placement yourself, and you were clicking through the image and then going there. Then they became the middleman and they put search in shopping in there. But yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, when I worked at Net-a-Porter, Google Shopping was a massive revenue driver, but yeah, who knows? I mean, I find the whole thing of e-commerce, fashion, shopping for fashion it seems very archaic, right? Well, actually, it's one of these weird ones where you think going into an actual shop, like going into a store, seems really old school. Like, why would I do that if I could buy it online? But when it comes to like buying clothes, I just think it's just such a pain in the ass to order stuff online and then it arrives and doesn't fit you properly and you got to send it back. I'd much rather actually go into a shop for that. So, and then I don't know if it's the same in the States, but in the UK, the high streets are just dying. So you go to any major town, any town in the UK, and there's like no shops left. They're all closed, and everyone's just shopping online. But it's almost like we've gone past the point of no return, and soon we're going to be like, actually, it was actually really nice going shopping in a shop, and then we'll move into this world where you don't even browse for stuff. Maybe if all the things we're talking about, you're just being suggested things, and we've already have like the food delivery, clothing delivery. If the systems can get to know you so well that it just turns up and you're like, that's cool, I like it at 85%, I'll just keep it. Maybe it's like the death of shopping as we know it, and we just won't shop that way anymore. It'd be like the Flintstones. It'd just be like, not the Flintstones, the Jetsons, the other end of the spectrum of history cartoons. But there'd just be boxes turning out. It's like, oh, that's my clothes for this quarter. That's all my food for this month. I don't need to think about that. That's my music. Who knows?
Yeah, it's that model of shopping. It's definitely. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like the headlines going around like D2C is dead, like D2C is dying, like, and that's
I started to see this. Yeah. But tell us more about it, because I've just started to see this popping up in my.
He's been too lazy to click.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, so like, give me the summary. What's the point about that?
I mean, the TLDR is basically the claims of it's dying are backing into a lot of the companies that IPO'd. So like if you look at, and even ones that were kind of just about to IPO that were like larger D2C brands that kind of fell off. So like Smile Direct Club is a big example. Like they were a big D2C brand, they fell off. A lot of the food subscription boxes like Blue Apron, they IPO'd, that stock has never performed that well. Ditch Fix was another one that IPO'd, not really doing too hot. There were just a lot of products. I mean, Warby Parker is like a great example of like the quintessential D2C brand. They really cut out the middleman with eyeglassware. They're still doing okay. That's I think they're still held up. But a lot of the other D2C brands that have had a lot of advertising success in the past 5 years aren't really showing that financial success that you could expect from a company that's maybe public for 3 to 5 years now. There are more hopes there. So a lot of these claims are backed into that idea that their stock price isn't performing well, and there are just other players that are coming in and disrupting it. There's not that big a moat around food subscription. There are so many companies that can easily get into food subscription. So it's just so hard to find a block there. But to your point, Allbirds is another one that I'm actually this is my example coming up here. Allbirds was, used to be a D2C darling company. Like they raised a ton of money. They were warned by, in Silicon Valley, and then they kind of made their way to just the mainstream comfortable walking shoe. But they too have had, layoffs recently, a lot of financial stress. But Allbirds has some stores, physical stores in Manhattan, in New York City. And so does Harry's too, like another D2C brand.
The raises,
Their claim is like, we want the brand awareness. Like we need it as like an extension of our brand, and it helps with that. Now, I don't know if that's really true, or if that's just kind of like a shareholder messaging pivot of like, we're doing something about it. There's an issue. Oh, I have a solution. Let's try a store. I don't really know actually what that is, but I would agree that shopping in person seems like way more of a window shopping behavior. And then when you're ready to buy, you're probably doing that online.
They're becoming like mini temples, or like experiential shop, that you don't go to shop, you go to experience the brand. So then it's just a question of like, can you afford it? Can you afford to have that as a brand, as a business? Do you have the fundings to do that? But I think to the Allbirds and Ari's point, I think because they made their money so early in that wave, the DTC wave, they're probably kind of okay now running it and still have those stores, but because not having the stores, then there would be like a clear signal that things are really, really bad. Even like we already know they're bad,
Right.
but it would be like really like
Yeah,
maybe
we
accepting
cannot close
defeat.
these stores, guys.
Yeah,
because people will know we're dying.
yeah, it'd be like the stakes are too high when you've gone too far into this. But new brands today, like what is the? I wanted to ask you, like, what's the play now in DTC or just like e-commerce in general, or what you're seeing in the companies you work for?
In the companies I work with, probably the biggest trend is like moving more omni-channel. Like most of the times when I'm coming onto an account with a DSC brand, it's like, you know, they were working with usually it's an agency, and I'm kind of coming in as a contractor. There's usually like an approach, like I can tell at this point, like okay, like there's kind of a standard approach that was taken, and I'm kind of redoing the campaign builds a bit. Um, I mean, I think the biggest trend outside of just like the technical parts of moving more omni-channel and just really following best practices, because I'm actually still surprised when I come in to your point that you said earlier. Like I think a lot of growth marketers are becoming a little bit more lazy over time. Where I really do come into accounts a lot of the time where I'm like these bid adjustments haven't been touched in like months. The budgets haven't been reallocated. Like it just looks very static. Um, but yeah, of the brands I'm working with, it is definitely more of like omni-channel D2C, omni-channel marketing play. A few brands are kind of experimenting going into like Walmart or Amazon or Target. And then, sometimes we're doing a campaign, like a supportive campaign on that. Like we'll run a little bit of so for example, like I work with Partake Foods, which is they have like this whole line of, I think they're like the biggest allergy friendly cookie brand in the States. And they had a D2C presence, an e-commerce store, and they had store presence in Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, etc. And what we do is we had like a dual approach. We had our ads running across YouTube, social, and search. And then we also had ads that were supporting Walmart, Target, and we had like specific zip codes. So we would run like a zip code campaign around a Walmart store in New Jersey, one in Massachusetts, and like we would drive traffic there and evaluate. So it was of those D2C brands, it's a smaller portion for sure that are doing that Walmart, Amazon, Target approach. Most are of the ones online are kind of just being like, we need to scale, and the solution to that is usually more creative and being omni-channel.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it's like the one. Or the one, I'm trying to say the one remaining, but I don't mean the one remaining. The few remaining shops, the stores that people actually go to, are still that, like when they go grocery shopping. Obviously, a lot of people have it delivered, as I do, but you can still go grocery shopping. It's almost like if you get your D2C product in the aisle now, you haven't got to worry so much about the inflated costs and all these issues of the D2C brands. I'm sure there's part of it is down to increased competition, decrease in kind of money that we talk about all the time with people, like decreasing ad budgets, the costs, inflated costs of to drive a CAC or a CPA over the last few years means that they just haven't got the money to keep hitting those, and it's like, where the hell do we go now, right? Because we need to get incremental new customers, but we can't afford to pay 50% more than we were paying 2 years ago to get those customers, because already our margins were just super tight. So it's like, maybe it's like, now, oh shit, now we need to like push into Walmart, and we need to get on the shelves in over here like Sainsbury's and Tesco's alongside all these other kind of FMCG brands, and that's super interesting. And it also goes back to there's so many subscriptions now. I know D2C isn't always subscription, but a lot of D2C brands moved into the subscription model, right? It's like, how many subscriptions can you possibly have in your life? And I've said this like multiple times on this podcast, but so if you're coming up with yet another subscription brand, I was talking to someone the other day, and he was saying that it's kind of not news to us, but it was nice to hear someone else say it. You're not competing for you've got 10 competitors. You're not competing against those competitors. You're competing against that person's day that is completely full of everything, from like their childcare, their work, their doom scrolling, their exercise, all of that stuff, your product, your ad, your service, your delivery, whatever, has to take some of that share away from something else, and it's just getting increasingly more difficult to do that because people's time is finite, and our time is now just completely overfilled every single day. It's like, who's got time to go and sign up to another subscription or give a shit about your product?
Mm-hmm. There was a funny on that point. There was a funny, I think it was on an earnings call with Netflix where Reed Hastings said, like, I think an analyst on the earnings call asked him, what do you see as the biggest obstacle for Netflix's growth? And he said, people gaming and people taking naps and falling asleep. I was like to your point, like there are those types of things that obviously like shareholders are going after, which is like, can we just get someone's attention as much as possible? Netflix is a funny example in that like they're dealing with people sleeping too much. They want to be on.
Yeah.
They want to be on while you're sleeping.
They don't be sending you to sleep.
Yeah, they want to be sending you to sleep and then stay on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. They're like probably no other time in history do you have to compete so much for attention. I mean, it's somewhat of a spectacle in and of itself with the Super Bowl, where I do feel like the Super Bowl is probably one of the only like ad placements today where you can run one ad placement or one ad campaign, and it's like actually a campaign in the truest sense, where like people like you can talk to someone on the street or be like, "Did you see that?" And like they'll understand it, whereas before, if like there was a popular in the 60s or 70s, if there was a popular product or advertisement, like it almost entered into the zeitgeist more easily.
Yeah.
Now that's like it's probably the only way in is a Super Bowl ad, or like you just have tons of venture capital and you just spend it, very quickly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. No one's talking about, oh, did you see that Whoop campaign that I'm being targeted to? Like, no, because there's about 700 different versions of that going to different people. Yeah, it's really interesting. We spoke about this a couple of months ago actually on I think it was it Black Friday or Cyber Monday? The Shopify when they kind of built the website and Stripe as well, where you could kind of live see people's spending power, and then the Shopify one went up on the Orb in Las Vegas, that circular thing, and I was like, wow, it's a reminder of like this is what a true, almost like old school joined up marketing campaign looks like, which is very rarely done anymore, which is a shame. I mean, maybe that's we were talking about where does marketing go in a world which is searchless, then maybe it's just back offline, because that's always going to be there until everyone's in Vision Pro or whatever. But back to billboards. You probably see, if you looked at out of home usage or costs in the last kind of 10 years, I'm sure it's probably starting to creep back up.
Yeah, I think to your point,
I don't know where those people are going. They're not going shopping, but
I think there is there's definitely a gap in being more creative than everyone else and using these like maybe old school kind of medium or like IRL placement to break a pattern or do something. Most of the time it will be the companies that have like a lot of fundings and stuff, but you see some startups sometimes with like minimal budget, like breaking through the noise with like something interesting on the web or something they're done on the street, doing something on the street, taking a photo, putting it on LinkedIn, and kind of that blowing up as well. Like to a degree, that's kind of interesting in itself. And I think to that point, I think there's definitely been like a shift in organic content being effective again in the last like maybe a couple of years, because of the way TikTok changed the game with like their way of feeding you content, which was not network based but interest based. Is that something that I want to move into that a little bit? If you have like an opinion on this, or if it affected your way of working, especially in the last 12 months, and where you see that going in the future, especially working on the paid side of things, working with organic content and stuff. Do you get involved in that? Do you see that working?
I usually don't. I mean, my work with organic is pretty limited. The main work I do with organic is usually the person that I'm. If it's a smaller company, usually the person that does organic social, I'm giving that feedback to them through what's working with paid, and they kind of upcycle their content into something that is a bit more advertiser oriented, and performs well. It's a bit more performance oriented.
Yeah.
I mean, I give high level advice for organic, but organic is it's interesting because it's definitely not scientific. It's very much so about like so I almost think about it in the similar sense as like what makes for a good podcast performance. Whenever I ran podcast ads, like we saw, it didn't matter if we were running on like a big podcast. At the margin, of course, it matters, but I mean, at the margin, it didn't matter much. At the extremes, it mattered more. But if you were running on a podcast placement, and one podcast was a little bit bigger, the other one was a little bit smaller, the smaller one would perform better if the host read was enthusiastic, if it was compelling, if it felt native. And I think about it in a similar sense with organic social, where if like I kind of distill into like generally three things. Like if you want to do well in organic social, and well being defined by getting followers, engagements, and increasing your brand lift, either you can get out a ton of content and just like hammer content in people's feeds. You could try to partner with an influencer and kind of piggyback on shared things. You could do giveaways or promotions, stuff like that, like within your feed, and that helps grow. And of course, those are like the standard three. The fourth one, that's like the magic is, can you make something that's viral? Like it's like such a hard strategy though to say, because saying make something go viral, it's like not something I often give as strategy, because it's like, okay, how do I do that? but it's totally true that like there is something to say for if you find a fantastic talent, and usually it's humor. I think if they're just witty, if they just have like a unique perspective and can communicate it in a, like not really an interesting way, but like a comical related a way that's like relatable and comical. I feel like that's what I've seen really start to blow up more quickly. It's interesting actually on that, where if you look at, I was thinking about this the other day, if you look at some of the top podcasts right now in Spotify or Apple, of course, there are some news ones like New York Times Daily, stuff like that. But if you look at ones that are actually more of like a host, it's comedians. It's like Andrew Schultz, Joe Rogan, Bad Friends. It's like comedians that have significant followings. I know people don't usually think of Joe Rogan as a comedian, but he was a comedian. He was a stand-up comedian. So anyways, it's just it's interesting. I think like that's starting to make its way into social a bit, where like humor performs really well organically. I think it's like an interesting.
It's really interesting you say that, because the other night I was randomly watching a PewDiePie YouTube video.
Okay, I remember him.
I know who he is. I've literally never watched any of his videos before. I got one suggested that was relevant, and I watched it. And at the end, literally the last 2 minutes of the video, I think it was like a 35-minute long video. The last 2 minutes was a NordVPN ad, which he read. But he did it so well, and it was like a comedy routine, and it was obvious it was a NordVPN ad. But rather than being like all of a sudden like cuts to him at a different angle wearing a different pair of clothes, I use NordVPN because blah blah blah, and you just instantly like hitting the skip button. I watched it to the end and even commented on the video, and I was like, this is the first time I've ever sat through a host read video, a host read ad, and actually enjoyed it. And it was because it was funny.
Yeah.
And even when I watch, I love watching music production videos, and they're always sponsored by Splice or whatever, they will still be like, I'm going to quickly make a beat through Splice. And it's like, I don't care about that stuff. It's like when they can make it funny, but I was like, wow, that's the magic sauce, because and he had at the end of the video. So I mean, that's saying something, right? Because that means people are sitting and watching them through even after finishing off the video, which is pretty crazy. So question on organic and all the stuff we've spoken about, like lack of attention and cutting through the noise. Do you think it's realistic to create an ad that can cut through everything that you're bombarded with on, let's say, on a TikTok scroll. You're seeing funny stuff, you're seeing shocking stuff, you're seeing like crazy stuff you can't believe is true. Is it possible to make an ad that cuts through that noise or not?
I mean, as a growth marketer, in a way, I have a pretty low bar definition of cut through, because for me, cut through means, are they converting off of it?
Yeah.
So like as a growth marketer, like, yes, like you definitely can, but in the stronger sense of the word cut through, like, wow, that advertising campaign is going to stick with me and they're going to do case studies on it, like later on, like that kind of thing. Like, probably not. I don't think I'm going to, maybe some stuff for bespoke posts I did because we were just running with such a sizable budget for so long, but I think if that's your goal, like, it's going to be hard to find performance, because there's a different brain if you work with a brand marketer versus a performance marketer. I think a performance marketer may try to do what you're kind of describing, and it's just a very hard bar to hit.
Yeah, and also it's what we said earlier. I think they are prestigious placements where the world is paying attention to, and they are placements that are just crap. No one cares, and they do convert, but they don't stick. They just they will make people act and buy and whatever, subscribe to something, but then even the person doing it would just forget about it. They'll be satisfied very quickly. It's like, I wanted that product, I've been targeted, I bought it, and then I'm just gonna forget until I receive it. It's fine. But yeah, there's no like stickiness to it, basically, because of the nature of the placement.
Does that mean then that in those placements, which are probably all the feed-based placements, right, realistically, you cannot truly build brand awareness in a feed in the same way as you can, obviously, in a Super Bowl ad, but on TV, maybe out of home, because what you're actually building is brand annoyance. Because I'm sick of seeing Stephen Bartlett telling me how great Huel is every fucking day, every YouTube video that I watch, and that's brand awareness, right? 'Cause I'm talking about it right now, but it's making me pissed off.
Yeah.
Can you truly build brand awareness in the feed in 2024?
That tipping point would be a fun case study to do, a tipping point. And like,
yeah, what's the tipping point? Yeah.
I wish that more ad set builds, more ad group builds had a frequency cap on it, where you could actually add like, don't serve this if the frequency score is over 7, because I totally know what you mean. Like, if I see the same ad, like sometimes when I'm watching a long form YouTube video, I'll see an ad for like the same company like multiple times. I'm like, okay, get out of here. And I mean, as an advertiser, I don't want to keep spending those dollars either. So yeah, it would be interesting for these, ad algorithms to pick up on that and like provide more of a frequency cap for across like all types of campaign builds, for sure.
And to answer your question, Jake, I think you still do, but yeah, it depends on where you are in your journey. I think when you start at the beginning of a journey of a company, it does help, I think, bring awareness and build some sort of like a base layer of like what the brand is in a country. If you come from nothing, when you start running ads, I think it does bring like, okay, I've seen, like the very subjective thing that I can say is like, in some startup that I work with over the past few years, when in like, a social setting with like friends that I haven't seen for a while, and I tell them where I work, more than one time, someone that I've maybe never met or that I haven't seen for a while would be like, oh yeah, I've seen an ad. Like, it does happen. So I think, based on that fact alone, no, I'm kidding, but I think it does. I think it does, because of the millions of impressions that you get over time. It does do something, but eventually you get to like a frequency where it's like, yeah, just I know about you now, just fuck off. So then you have to do other
Yeah.
things to cut through the noise, and maybe it's like more experimental stuff. Maybe it's a shop on the high street with like some like cool thing. Maybe it's billboards, maybe it's Super Bowl, maybe it's whatever, you know. But
yeah. So I guess it's I guess back to Jake's point, it's like the tipping point of frequency. Because back to my Huel example, the next time I want a meal replacement shake, I will probably search for Huel.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't need to keep paying to show me that ad, and I know I'm going to see it for the rest of my life. So it's almost like that they're forcing me to buy it just to get the hell rid of it, only to find out they're not excluding their audiences properly, and I still see the damn thing. But it's like there's not really. I guess what I was getting at was there isn't really a kudos in advertising anymore in the same way of maybe 20 years ago. You would see a big billboard for something, or you would see an ad, and it would be printed, or it would be on TV, and you'll be like, cool, this must be something cool or it must be doing well because it's in this placement. But now, you see an ad for your local like plumbing firm in the feed. It's not like you don't pay attention just because it's in the feed. I guess what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you just scroll past it, you see it goes in, but you don't stop and like, oh wow, it's really like looks like an amazing product. And also because everything's optimizing down to conversion focused metrics in these platforms, you're not even seeing a creative story. You're just seeing like USP, pain point, price, reduction just flash up in front of you. So it's not even like it's not like an ad anymore. So that's like, I guess that's the split between a true brand awareness campaign and direct response campaign, where a direct response campaign is always going to be trying to get you to click, but a brand awareness ad is trying to emotionally trigger you, I suppose.
That's true.
I think that's why there is and I haven't tested this, but I've read and listened about people talking about this, mostly in the US actually, that direct response TV is very interesting right now because you can have that storytelling creative. You're on TV, it's targeted, it's measurable. I think there's a company that does that. I can't remember. There's probably quite a few in the US, but I don't think it starts with a T, and it's not available in the UK. Or at least last time I checked, they were not operating in the UK, which is a shame. But maybe you know about it, Jake. Tell me if you know. But yeah, I think it was a cool thing.
Yeah, direct like performance-driven TV is becoming, I think, like a very interesting channel. I mean, similar to like OTT, like running across like Netflix or Amazon Prime, stuff like that. I was just looking at time. I cannot believe that it was already an hour. I literally thought there's only been 30 minutes so far.
I was thinking the same.
I do have to start wrapping up, but that was wild. I literally only thought it had been like a half an hour. That went by so quickly.
Yeah, let's quickly wrap. In that case, we've had to finish early because and it takes a lot to engage me and you at 8 o'clock at night. So it's been a really great chat. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
we have to come back for a part 2, and then we can answer Yo's question about direct response TV. Yes. Everyone's going to be on that cliffhanger right now. But Jake, thank you, make them wait. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah, we need to do a part 2. I think there's so much more. If we meet again in like 3 to 6 months, I think there are going to be like the predictions we talked about. We can actually sort of try to answer them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
The SERP will no longer exist.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Sweet. But yeah, this was fantastic. It was great connecting.
No.
Have a good night, guys.
Nice one, James.
Have a good day.